Alright, this is the painting commentary track for Cuprum the Trickster. So we're starting with the base. I used a little bit of sponge here. Copper dragons, as I mentioned in the video, like to live in mountainous, hilly terrain, so I wanted the base to, rather than be flat, kind of represent being up on a hill. And rather than make it way too much with too much stone, I use a sponge to elevate it and then just build some stone up around the base. So we're just gluing this sponge onto the disc that comes with it, and then we're going to glue the mini, and then I'm also going to super glue. It seems a little bit weird, except that so there's your super glue, the Gorilla Glue gel. It's good stuff. You should try it. That'll bond instantly with the sponge. The PVC glue would take longer, and I wanted to be able to start using it right away. So now I'm just using some RANDO gravel chunks from outside. Make sure you wash them off so you disinfect them in case you bring any bugs or anything in with them. I'm just putting them around the base, again, to hide the sponge and leave a foundation for what is being built up to look like a hill. Also, you see this time, for those of you who do watch these commentary videos, I didn't do it in time-lapse. Instead of putting the whole thing, I did it in real time. So let me know in the comments below if you like this better or if you want to see the whole thing in time-lapse. So now we're using some of these baby stones. I got them from Michael's, just to fill in the holes. So now it's time to paint the dragon. I'm using HASHUT copper. I didn't use many paints on this particular dragon Cuprum. It's basically just 5. And just real quickly, as I finish up the thought on the base, I also use some mountainside tufts from Army Painter. You'll see them in the finished base. So again, HASHUT copper. I'm using it for the main body of the dragon as well as the spines and the arm areas. I like doing the spines first. I finally decided, as I mentioned in the other commentary videos, should do the spines first or the webbing first. I do the spines first, and then I'll try my best to not hit them when I do the webbing aspect of the wing. So here we are, painting on these spines with the same paint as we've done the whole dragon's whole body, and we're going to accent it with other different bronzes and copper colors. So next we're going to the bottom belly of the dragon, and this is a special paint blend. I use WRAITHBONE mixed with SKULLCRUSHER brass, a metallic paint mixed with a white creamy paint, because I didn't want to do it too, like if you look in the monsters in the player's handbook or the monsters manual, I'll post a picture here again, you can see that it's almost like a white underbelly the dragon has. I just thought it was too white, so I mixed the brass in with the WRAITHBONE so that it would indeed still have a little bit of a metallic sheen, and it muted the color a bit so it wasn't just yet another metallic color on the dragon. So that's how I kind of came up with this idea. So I paint one side of his breast and then come back and do the other side when I do these. Alright, so next we're doing a SYCORAX bronze. This particular layer paint is what I used for the webbing. As you can see, since I have all of the bones and the top areas done with the HASHUT copper, now I'm just being very careful to put it in between and not touch it as I paint on the webbing. It's good. Now these metallic dragons have a lot of pores and a lot of detail in the webbing, so this takes a while to put on. Just make sure you put lots of water on it. You don't want it to be too clumpy and look thick, or you'll lose all sorts of details and it won't get a good shine later. Okay, so once we've done the webbing, we're going to move on to, flip them over. I'm doing webbing, again, more webbing. You can see again how I've just taking my time to not paint over top of those spines, so when all is said and done, the spines will be, you don't have to double your work. Okay, so after this, I'm going to start using the first of 3 shades that I used on the wings to give it the look that I was trying to go for. I like trying to get a good range of colors instead of hard, fast lines. So the first paint I used is a Tamiya paint. The first time I've tried it, it's called Smoke X19. Here it comes. Oh, never mind. Screaming Bell first. Herp. So Screaming Bell is a Citadel paint. This is my accent color. On top of that HASHUT copper, Screaming Bell, it's another type of copper. You can see it's got a lot more red tone to it. I really like that. I thought it looked really cool. The 2 colors. Basically, the webbing in the wing the HASHUT copper, and the screaming bell. 3 colors for the whole dragon, and then the mix for his chest of the wraithbone in the brass. So I'm basically putting this deep red screaming bell on his horns, on his claws, on his wing hooks, on his back spine, on his plates. Anywhere where it's not HASHUT copper is going to be screaming bell instead. 2 wonderful copper colors that look really good together, if you ask me. Here we go again. I'm going up his spine. Just taking my time. Remember, when you paint, don't rush. Use lots of, water down your paints. Go thin. Go multiple coats is better than putting too much on and glooping it up and missing out on some details that otherwise you wouldn't. It's not a race. Put some music on. Enjoy yourself. It's your hobby. You're not rushing. Unless you have to put out an episode every Saturday. Then you might rush a little, but... So as you can see, I'm not the best painter in the world by any means, but I do enjoy it, and I hope you do too. It's a great hobby, just peaceful. Just taking the time, making sure to get in there. If I spill over onto the webbing, no big deal, can fix it later. Don't try and fix it while the screaming bell is wet, or you're just gonna make another mistake, or the paint will run into each other. So, and you don't, people think they use really tiny brushes when they do this stuff. I don't. Only use tiny brushes if it requires like a really tiny surface. For these big areas, I like a bigger brush. And if you're curious what kind of brushes I use, you can leave me a comment below in the comments or email me, and I'll definitely let you know. Okay, so more screaming bell. Again, unfortunately, that's blocking our face there. I'm putting it on his horns, on his chin, on his side plate, his tongue. Just putting it in different spots in a nice, even manner, blending it nicely with the other color that's there, so it's not so sharp. And there we go, on the tips of the wings, as I said earlier. Look at my palette, 4 colors. It's amazing. Seeing as like the other last 3 minis that I've painted, I've had like 19 paints. This was nice. There's a couple washes coming, and then the verdigris, which I used a blue to get the nice blue effect. But other than that, this was a nice change of pace to paint. Again, I try to paint along the lines of the Monsters Manual. You can paint it however your imagination takes you. And you can see those wings dried nicely. Got a nice copper shine to them. Bronzy copper shine. I'm also doing the brass dragon and the bronze dragon eventually, so we'll have to get creative to prevent them all from looking the same. I'm better at not getting my hair in the camera, but sometimes this giant ass afro gets in the way. This quarantine hair is brutal. I'm sure you're dealing with the same problem. See his thighs here? Again, screaming copper on any of these plates that he has. And here it is again on his armbands, if you will. Anything that looks like plated armor on top of his scales, I did in a screaming bell. And then when it was just pure scales, I kept to the HASHUT copper. And when it was webbing, again, SYCORAX bronze was the color of choice. Now this is where we're going to turn that webbing into something else other than just a bronze flat surface. It's coming up here. As I was saying, it's a Tamiya paint. It's Smoke X19. I used it because it's got a glossy finish, and also I'm trying to conserve my Nuln Oil because it's kind of in short supply. Also, this has got a weird smell to it. I've never used a Tamiya paint before, but it goes on nice, and I'm trying to capture different colors of the spectrum of the bronze and the copper. So copper can have a very rich, deep color, can also be very light and red, and then as it oxidizes, it turns kind of a green-blue. So keeping it low to the base of the dragon, I did this black just to make it look really dark. The next shade that I'm going to use is REIKLAND FLESHSHADE. Here it comes. Now that the black is dried, you see how that makes the bronze turn more red. And I'm applying it over top of the dry black, and what that's doing is it's bringing the 2 colors together. So yes, it's darker, but once I put this REIKLAND FLESHSHADE on there, it's going to darken it up and make it look more coppery. I'm also putting some on top of the screaming bell and other areas of the HASHUT copper where I want to, just like any other shade or wash you would do, to make the details pop up. Now we're going to the verdigris. SOTEK green is the color. Now water it down crazy. Watch how I put it on here. I put on really thick at the ends of the wings. But then, since it's just wet, 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 I use my brush and I keep pushing that same paint up and more, and see how it's soaking up. I'm using the same bit of paint that was on the end, and I'm going further in and bringing it back down a little. And I'm leaving it to stay behind in all the little recesses as a wet wash. And it's not an ink, it's a paint, so it's going to dry chalky if you're too aggressive. But this is supposed to be a young dragon, so his discoloration of scales wouldn't be in full force yet. And as you can see, as I wipe it down on there, it's just giving a little hint of blue, as opposed to I'm dabbing it and I'm drying my brush off screen as well, and then going back at it. And then once it dried, or once it's applied, I come back on these corners and put a little bit more on the edge. And when all is said and done, between the smoke from the Tamiya, plus the REIKLAND FLESHSHADE, plus the SYCORAX bronze, plus this SOTEK green, I really love the way these wings turned out. And I'll leave you with a couple stills at the end. I finished off with some white in his eyes, a little of the SOTEK green on his tongue. I didn't do anything with the acid breath that these dragons have. I was trying to keep it all true to form, looking like a copper that had oxidized. So here's some of the finished pictures of Cuprum, whose name is from Cyprus, which is what the Romans called copper, because that's where copper originally came from, Cuprum, where the word copper came from. Anyways, so I'm sorry if I sound a little tired. It's 1:45 on Saturday morning. I'm just wrapping up this video for those 10 of you who enjoy this. Please, if you do like it, please like and subscribe and share it with your friends. I'm trying to get more people on the board who enjoy this, because I know there's a lot of people out there who would. It's just getting noticed and having them join up is tricky at the beginning. So thank you very much for supporting the channel. I hope you enjoyed these videos. As always, stay safe. I hope you and your family are well. And this is GMA Tank signing off. Thanks. Bye-bye.